Hi, that's Nicole.
And that's Steph. Welcome to the Ego Drop podcast, where we are learning about ego and how it affects our lives. And we're here, as you know, every other week where we talk about everything and nothing. That's
I
on our
like that.
minds.
Everything and nothing, don't we just? How are
So,
you,
how
Nick?
are you?
You all
Oh,
right?
yeah, I'm good. I'm good. We said it at the same time. I'm not too bad, actually. A bit relaxed today, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty good. Pretty good. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm feeling a little bit depleted, a little bit under the weather, if you must know. I don't know quite what's wrong, but yeah, not quite feeling my normal self. But
Mm.
yeah, it's just been, I think it's been a busy few weeks with work, and I think all my training and everything else, it's just got a little bit too much. And I feel like my body's having some sort of visceral response to all of that, just telling me to rest.
No, it's
Exactly.
saying no.
Yeah, so I haven't been running for a few days, and tomorrow I've got a day off, and I don't have a huge amount planned for once, and I've got a weekend that looks quiet, and yeah, so hopefully I'll be on the mend. But yes, thank you for asking.
That's good. That's good. That's good. It's nice when you have, little quiet period where you can say, "Oh,
Oh,
I'm gonna have some downtime today or this weekend." That's wonderful. Anyway,
definitely, definitely. So yeah, so
so
how has your ego affected you, if you can think of anything for the last couple of weeks?
yeah, I can actually think of something, and I keep coming here and talking about it all the time. You probably soon be bored now with me going on about my fitness journey.
Oh, how is it going? Tell us,
Get
tell
a
us.
life, Nicole,
Well,
and stop
I could see on
complaining.
the old Insta that you've made a start on the old detoxing. So it's
Yeah.
off the ground and running, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, and exactly. The thing is, Steph, I just since as you know, I used to be really gym crazy, health crazy, and all that good stuff, and over the top. And for me, when it comes to my training and stuff, it's all or nothing. I struggle with the in between. And for the last year, I just went through a phase of no training at all, as you know, for some 12 months. And then I find
Yeah.
myself gained quite a lot of weight, feeling a little bit this and that, which I've mentioned in previous podcasts, down and out and da da da. And I've, canceled my gym membership with one gym, started at a new gym to try and give myself that new feeling. And I'm struggling to get it together. You know what I mean? I joined a new gym back in April, and I'm just not attending all the time. I think I went for the entire period of April, but then back to my old self. Oh, I've got this would work in the evening. That and I'm not doing anything. I'm prioritizing everything as I set my training and my fitness. So yeah, I decided to, as you said, on Friday I went and I had a cupping session, wet cupping done. Um, it's good, but it's painful a little bit, not
It
over the top
looked
for me. And then, hmm?
it
Yeah,
looked
because they basically break the skin. They break the skin to do it. That's what they do. And the massage was terrible. He was so heavy-handed, but he's just trying to get the blood moving so that he could do what he needed to do. And then yeah, and then so but prior to that, I started back in my boxing training
oh fab.
with a group of guys that I usually train with. When I think have you attended one of the fights? Yeah, you
Yeah.
attended one of the last fights. That was Yeah. So I gone back there because I find boxer sizes a little bit for me. This is the real deal. So I went there and my God, Steph, it has shaken me. The physical aspect in terms of the fitness level. You know, I'm the woman. I'm the only at the moment. I'm the only woman in the squad, and there's no exception. There's no different training. I don't do anything different. And his
Where
style of
didn't he punch you in the face last time you were training?
yeah.
Pretty hard.
So so we do contact, but into the training, I don't know when they started, but I know when I joined. So it seems as if because they're having a fight at the 31st of August, so they've
Oh,
got to have been training for a number of months now to get to the stage where. So we're now doing contact, and I had contact fight Monday of this week with a guy who's horrid. But because I'm not fit enough to really fight him back the way I want to, I had to just, so, I mean, he's punching, he's punching me a bit hard. But last week I had a guy punch me in the face, but because he's so fast, I couldn't catch him. So my ego was shaken in the sense of, your fitness is shit, and here you are. But I went there because I needed this. So my ego's been kicked, but it's built me back to the place of, okay, you know what you need to do, stick to it. And because I'm training with a group, then you have to keep going, as opposed to if I was at the gym on my own training, then I'm bored and I stop. And that's what's been going on since I've gone to this new gym. I'm not training at the level that I can. I'm not pushing myself that I could. I'm not going as hard. So the point of going to this place is to get me back into the discipline of, because I travel about 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes to this training. So, I'm going really out of my way. My gym is just almost on my doorstep. And I'm going to the gym, and all I'm doing is 45 minutes on the bike, spinning for 45 minutes, spinning, because I'm trying to build my stamina, my endurance up. But I'm feeling good because I go there. So when I finish this today, I'm going literally as soon as we finish recording. I know that you're going to be doing your yoga.
Yes.
As soon as we finish, I'm out the door as well to go and do my sessions, because I do them Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So I'm feeling good. So my ego is in a positive space, I would say, because of the steps I'm taking now, or I've committed myself to. Yeah. So that's that for me. But how about you? How's your ego affected you this week?
I think obviously, like I say, I have been a little bit under the weather, and on top of that, I've got a really painful injury. I've hurt my hip, which I think is probably an age thing with running. Um, but I remember when I ran the marathon a couple of years ago, I suffered with my hip for quite some time afterwards, and then I got out of the habit of running, and it kind of healed and had no problem. And then obviously now I'm back running again. There is pain, and because I'm running quite lengthy, like I did 10 miles the other week, and I was
Wow.
down back to, should have been 8 miles Friday, but I only managed 6 because it was just too much. But I've also changed my trainers. Have had a gait analysis. So I've got some proper trainers, but
Oh,
again, that can affect the body, can't it?
yes.
So this week I'm in absolute crippling agony, so I can't run at all. And that's really knocked my ego a little bit, because I'm thinking, I got to 10 miles, and if
Yeah,
you've run before, you know what it's like.
yeah,
If you get out the
yeah,
habit, you have to try to start again. And I had this
absolutely.
run booked in a few weeks' time, and now it's looking a bit doubtful if I'm going to manage that. And so I had a little bit of a
Oh,
bruised ego, but I
yeah,
have nevertheless I think I've flipped it to a bit more of a healthy ego, in that I've
yeah,
accepted and I'm listening to my body and I'm
yes.
resting, and I'm being a bit humble about it. So it is what it
Fantastic.
is. There we
Yeah,
go.
but the beauty is, you know what you can do, because look at that. You've done 10 miles a few weeks ago, and I know how hard it can be, because even like I said to you, having gone back to the boxing, the guy said, run the block twice. I'm like, my God, so I can just imagine 10 miles. So I understand what you mean. And if you've put in, you've gotten yourself back to this place, and all of a sudden you're gone. So I understand, but you know
It's
what?
always the
Don't give
way
up. Don't give up. Don't give up.
you always have that week of feeling unwell or injury,
Mm,
and it's frustrating, isn't it? But it's part of the journey, I
yeah,
suppose. So
yeah,
it's what it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
So I guess this
Anyway,
week's topic is quite fitting, because we're looking at ego and healing. Maybe not
oh
necessarily
yes,
just in the physical manner, but we've got a special guest to help
yes.
us consider the different ways in which we might heal our egos or our bodies and minds. Have you tried holistic therapy in the past, Nicole?
Yes, I have. I have done a fair bit actually. I was thinking about, as I said to you, even the other day when I did some, blood, sorry, liquid. I want to say all of that liquid, cupping. I've done, and I do meditation, and I've actually done meditation, with the Buddhist and all of that good stuff. I do practice mindfulness, on a daily basis. Even now, um, I've had Reiki done on me. I've done the chanting. Massage is one of my favorite things. I also get a bit
Nice.
of reflexology sometimes, you know what I mean? Oh, and I've gone to the sound bath. I've had a sound bath at the,
Oh,
oh, I've only done it
love,
once, but yeah,
I
it
love
was so
right now.
nice. I need to try and organize it so that you can come. It's what do
Yeah.
you go, Saturday, Sunday, because it's so good. It's so good and you feel so nice at the end of it. What
Uh,
about you? And I know you're into a
uh,
lot of
lo-
stuff.
love
So
a
what?
yeah, love a massage. I'm Reiki trained myself. In
Yeah,
fact, I guess is responsible for that really. So yeah, I've tried Reiki and yeah, love a bit of holistic therapy.
yeah. It's so good for you.
This
So good
it
for
is.
you.
So shall we take a little break before we introduce our guest?
Yeah. Yes. Welcome back to part two of today's episode, where we're exploring ego and healing. To help us explore this topic, please welcome to the podcast Marion McGough.
Thank
Welcome.
Hi,
you. Thank
thank
you. It's
you.
lovely to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, I know who you are, but could you please start by just explaining who you are to our listeners and what you do?
Sure. Okay. So, gosh, if I go back quite a while, I I was interested in energy work for a very long time. When I was a child, I was always intuitive. I knew things which were going to happen before they did. And of
Mm.
course, when you're young, you think everybody is the same as you. And so, as time went on, perhaps that part of my brain, which is responsible for opening up, for enlightening us, perhaps that changes or grows in a different way. Who knows? So, as I became a teenager and a little bit older than that, and as the years advanced, I moved away from that. It just nothing really. I wasn't really focusing on any energy, any healing. In my 20s, I trained as a beauty therapist and I worked in London. And I had a lovely gentleman that would come and see me, and he was very much an old style hippie. And he had a long beard and he had beads. And he said to me, "You could be a healer." And at that time, I thought, well, I didn't really understand. It just wasn't the right time for me. So I kind of just ignored it. Then fast forward to my mid 40s, and my husband was poorly, my mum was poorly, and I knew that the traditional way of looking after people, I knew the traditional medicines, the way that things were done in hospital wasn't the right approach because I was being told. I knew that. It's very strange. It was an intuitive feeling, but sometimes I felt that I was being guided. So one day I started to research Reiki. Well, actually, no, I started to research healing courses and Reiki kept coming up. I'd never heard the word, didn't know how to pronounce it, didn't know what it was. And then I thought, well, okay, then if this is some kind of healing, I'll go along and I would just do, 1 day course and see what happens. And so I was transformed. It sounds strange, but in that 1 day, everything changed. I felt more positive. I felt as if something had been lifted away from me. Something profound had changed within me. And that helped me help my husband, help my mom, and ultimately other people. And so I went and did my level 2, which perhaps you may know is a practitioner course. So I began to work with other people, and they started to say to me, well, can you teach me Reiki? And I thought, well, I don't really know how to, so I best go and do my level 3. And then from that point, I got very interested in working with people. I trained as a psychotherapist. I got interested in crystals and I wrote some books. And I also do a form of food intolerance testing now, which is based on energy as well. So then eventually I got my own clinic because it was very challenging to try and manage a diary where I was running from one place to another. It was also very stressful. So that kind of takes me to where I am now.
Wow. And you won the British Academy of Reiki.
I
You
do.
were Ashby Holistic Centre, the
Yeah.
International Guild of Complementary Therapists, and you just mentioned it a few moments ago with your books. You are an Amazon best-selling author.
Yes,
Nice.
So
I've done
really,
lots of things.
absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
A question I was going to ask you is what made you start out as a healer? So it's fair to say it's because of your personal circumstance with your own family, your husband and your mother and so on. That was the starting point or the birth of your career as a healer. Is that fair to say?
Yes, yeah. I think
Mm,
quite often with a lot of people that I work with, a lot of people that I
mm,
teach, they will say
mm,
to me, something has happened. So I will quite often say, why have you come along on the course? Why now? Why not
mm,
6 months ago or 2 years ago? Why
yeah,
are you here now? And
yeah,
quite often they will say, I just feel drawn to either I just feel
yes.
drawn to working with the energy at that time, or
Wow.
they will say, well, something has happened. There's been maybe a loss, and that
Mm,
loss could be of a person or a pet or a job, something has changed.
mm. So I suppose it's that thing of being drawn, isn't it, to your calling, one may say.
Yes, I think
Mm,
some people have a calling, but they
mm,
don't understand it or they choose to ignore it. And
yes,
I think that when you ignore things, then they get louder. It's like the tapping gets louder, the message
yes,
gets louder until you take
yes,
notice.
yes. And so on that basis, then, so you practice, as I think Steph has said in Ashby, the holistic center. So is it fair to say your center
Yeah.
in Ashby, is it Delazouche? How do you say it?
Yes,
Or
yes,
Zouch?
Ashby Degazouche. I think it's twinned with somewhere in France, so that's where
Yeah.
the Degazouche comes in.
Uh-huh. And this is your place close to your heart, then I take it.
Okay, so yes, because it is my space, and so
Yes.
it's the way I would like it to be. And I know
Mm-hmm.
we're going to talk about ego in a short while, but it's not that. It's more of a feeling of it being comfortable. It's not an
Yes.
ego related thing. And the reason that I chose Ashby was because the energy felt right. So
Mm-hmm.
I had worked renting a room at a certain premise in Ashby before I got my own place. So part of it was that it was business driven because I had clients already in the area. So therefore it kind of made sense to
Yes.
open some premises where people knew me. And secondly, the energy felt right.
Mm.
And you've mentioned that, Marion, you do a number of different treatments. Is there one that you feel is most effective? And if so, why?
Right. So I think I've been actually thinking about this. So it's not actually a Reiki or crystal healing treatment that I think is the most effective. It's a form of meditation that I do, which is connected with my psychotherapy, because that allows it's kind of like allows the person to bypass conscious awareness to go a little bit deeper. And I find that that helps to change things quite profoundly in ways which you can't do necessarily with traditional psychotherapy work. But if you were to ask me about a healing treatment, I would just say any any Reiki at all actually can be quite profound
Yes.
because it depends on what the person is willing to change, what they are ready to let go of at the
Mm,
time.
mm.
Mm. So is there any treatment that you enjoy having?
Oh, a very good question. Actually, I do enjoy Reiki. I do enjoy the Reiki, the full body Reiki treatments where I can just lie on the couch and allow someone else to work on me. And that's lovely. And of course, I do that quite often when I'm training somebody. And there are times where people will say, I'm nervous, I'm doing this on you because you're the teacher. But, when I'm lying on that couch, I just feel so relaxed and I'm really appreciative of that energy exchange. I absolutely love it.
I think we're taking for granted that everybody understands what Reiki is. Would you be able to briefly outline what Reiki is?
A very good question, actually. So Reiki is a form of spiritual energy. And so a Reiki practitioner they're taught. A Reiki practitioner is taught or connected to the source. And the source is whatever you choose it to be, depending on your belief system. And so the Reiki practitioner learns to draw energy in. So that can quite often be through the crown of their head. And that energy works all the way down someone's arms, out of their hands. And the focus is on sending that energy into the person for the highest good. So Reiki is a really lovely, gentle treatment. We're not trying to force something away because the person might not be ready to let go of something. We're not trying to push something in because the person might not be ready for that either. So it's a beautiful, gentle treatment which supports the energy field of that person as well as working for their highest good.
Lovely. And obviously on this podcast we explore ego and what it is.
Yes.
What does it mean to you? What do you understand ego to be?
Okay, so I was very fortunate, Steph, that you sent me a list of the questions over, and I had a quick look through them, and I thought about ego, and I thought, well, first of all, it's a strange thing to talk about. It's a very important thing to talk about, but actually, I might come at this from a slightly different angle. So, for me, an ego is something which can be culturally defined. So, with some countries, you are expected to have a strong ego, almost like a strong equivalent of a strong personality, that you display your ego. With other cultures, it's more a case of that you keep everything within. And so an ego can be expressed externally, but that is more related to culture than anything else. So I guess if I was to have to try to define ego, I would say it's something which is very personal to the individual, and it is how they feel themselves, not what they are expressing to the external world, not what other people are telling you or praising you, because we live, unfortunately, in a society where people can sometimes have too much praise. By overpraising somebody actually has the opposite effect and they lose confidence.
That's a really interesting reflection of ego. Thank you for that. Is it ever something that you have to address in any of your healing, somebody's ego?
I think that when I carry out some healing work, I will have a feel. And when I say feel, I don't mean with my hands, but a feeling more. Will have a feeling about what a person is like. So when someone comes to see me, obviously we have a verbal conversation. So I am paying attention to the words, but I'm also paying attention to what their energy is telling me. And so I will have a feeling of whether somebody has a fragile confidence or sense of self or ego, or whether that ego could be strong, really, really strong. But actually, sometimes with the strength, that can also be fragile, almost like a fake ego.
Yeah.
So when I work with energy, then I work a lot over the heart when I feel that somebody needs to have something there that is addressed. And again, it's not about me trying to change something, because that could also be my ego. I have to be
Yeah.
aware of my feelings. Am I putting my feelings of what this person should be like onto them when actually that's not right?
Yeah.
Mm. Can you think of examples when you have perhaps had an unhealthy ego, and if so, how have you dealt with that?
Okay, so I think the main example which comes to mind is somebody which was externally very successful, very energetic, very determined, who felt
Yeah.
that they knew what was what was right about everything, very opinionated. But once we started to carry out the treatment and we had a conversation, well, we had a conversation before the treatment, this person's ego was actually really quite fragile. And
Mm.
so once I started working on the during the Reiki treatment over the heart, it felt like the heart chakra was very small. The solar
Mm.
plexus felt very strong because this was the almost like the external presentation of I have a strong ego, I have lots of people who look up to me. I have a job, I have a business, I have lots of employees. But actually, the ego for that person was quite unhealthy because they had a very fragile ego, but they were showing to the external world that they were very strong, but they needed to just work a little bit on themselves internally to develop confidence because ego and confidence are quite linked.
Mm.
So, as a healer, presumably you have to advise somebody when they're off balance or when their ego might not be necessarily healthy. Have you ever had anyone take that type of advice badly, or are they quite
Oh,
receptive because they've come to you in the first place? One would hope they're already going to be responsive to what you've got to say, but have you had any negative experiences?
I think that it's more a case of, I think it's really important that somebody actually approaches such a subject really gently. You have to be very tactful. And so I've not had anybody who's taken it badly, but I've had people who have had doubt or they want to spend time reflecting because it's almost like you are looking inside of them and you are
Mm.
finding, you are seeing things or emotions that they don't show to the external world or don't show to anybody. So it is very, very private. It's almost as if someone catches you unawares, totally naked, that you feel very, very vulnerable. So those kinds of conversations have to be approached very tactfully. And I've not really had any problems with anyone really taking it quite badly. And I always ask people, would you like feedback? So I'm asking them permission. And therefore, that makes a big difference.
Mm. Uh, do you think ego prevents healing?
I think in such a case, if somebody has a really big ego, or actually even if they have a very fragile, small ego, very, very kind of like underconfident, very uncertain to themselves in with their intent and also to the external world, I think that people can go into almost like a trance-like state. So they
Mhm.
focus on either their successes or they focus on what is wrong, and therefore, when people keep repeating that to themselves, then they go into a trance-like state. It's a fixation. So a trance-like state is any state of fixed attention. And so
Mm.
that can prevent them from healing because it prevents them from seeing the bigger picture.
Mm. Yes, we've previously explored the issue of um, such as grief and
Okay.
how our ego can cause us to be attached to feelings such as sadness or or anger, that sort of thing. What treatments would you recommend in order to manage the ego if someone is struggling with attachment issues?
I think that there is certainly grief is certainly a process, and there's no right or wrong, because each person that we very sadly lose, we have a different relationship with. And so sometimes we have to come to terms with our feelings of what we felt about that person. Perhaps there might be unresolved issues. And so there is no absolute 7 stages of grief. This has been seen to be not true, because people grieve in their own way. And so I think that when people grieve, if they find a way of moving on with their life, if they try to replace what is missing, and actually I will correct myself there, not replace, because you can never replace a loss of a person, but you can look at your own life and start to make changes and think, well, okay, this person isn't in my life now. So what do I need to do to create a new life? So grief can stop you from moving forward, but I think everybody needs to grieve in their own way. And it can become pathological if somebody is still grieving in the same way that they initially grieved a year later. So there has to be, even if it's a tiny, tiny bit, little bit of kind of moving forward in some way. Treatment wise, I would tend to certainly spend a lot of time over the heart with Reiki, just a standard Reiki session, perhaps around the head or anywhere else where I might feel there is an imbalance. And I would probably advise such a client to actually just dedicate a little bit of time each day if they were grieving frequently throughout the day, or if each day was still full of grief, to just dedicate a short time to that grief and try and then find ways to move on during the day.
Okay. And similarly, if somebody was feeling stuck emotionally or emotionally depleted, perhaps because of an unhealthy ego, is it Reiki again that you would recommend, or is there anything else that you would advise treatment wise?
Sure, it would be more of a, could be Reiki, absolutely, because sometimes Reiki lifts emotions away without conscious thought, without conscious intent. So you don't have to think about it. The energy does its work if somebody's ready to let go. It's possible that somebody in such a set of circumstances could actually need some therapy, but therapy should be focused on moving a person forward, because some people can get stuck in the past by thinking about, this happened to me 5 years ago. I can't do this because this has happened to me. When actually, if we keep looking back, if we were walking down the road and we keep turning around, at some point we're going to fall over. We're not going to get to where we need to be. So looking forward is okay, with the occasional look back.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good way of looking at it. Is there an example that you can think of when ego has been helpful to you personally?
I think that for me, ego has led me to be more cautious, actually, at times. And I think that, so it depends on how you look at the ego, because the ego is a term from really psychoanalysis, psychodynamic theory. And so, yeah, I think for me, the ego has been more a case of, it's prevented me from doing things for quite a while. And I found that actually, by having the confidence, by trying to keep my ego in check and try to push myself externally to the external world, that's helped me thrive in ways which I wouldn't have done if I just listened to the ego as it was at that time.
Obviously, as well as Reiki, you do crystal healing and full of crystals. It's something that I would love to know a little bit more about. I haven't quite got round to investigating that yet. But I wondered if somebody was experiencing an unhealthy ego, is there a particular crystal or a number of crystals that you would recommend that they own or possess or utilize in some way?
So it would depend on which emotion the ego was associated with. So is somebody have an unhealthy ego because they're angry or because they're sad or for some other reason? So it would depend on the reason. So I think certainly if somebody was very kind of like scatty as well, sometimes people have a lot going on up here and can't focus. So I probably use something like smoky quartz to ground anything, any of the heavier, crystals which give a heavier vibration will really help with grounding. Certainly if somebody was unsure of something, the aquamarine, and to just hold the crystal in a hand and just focus on that, focus on the vibration and feel that vibration spreading all the way up the arm and going all the way down the body towards the heart, and just feeling and expressing those emotions and putting those emotions into the crystal until you felt at such a time where things were better, things had been balanced. That would be a lovely way of working.
Thank you.
You're clearly a very busy healer and teacher. What methods or habits do you practice to ensure your ego is healthy, or that your own mental health remains on an even keel, really? What do you do to ensure that?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because sometimes people don't think about the self-care. They think about everyone else, but they don't think about the self-care. And so
we had another lady on a few weeks ago, Karen, who runs a wellness centre and does a lot of massage and that sort of treatment. And she said exactly the same. You're so involved in treating others and you often put yourself last of the list. So sorry to interrupt, but I just thought that was a really interesting point that you've repeated.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, you're right. So for me, I have at the beginning of the day and late evening, I have time for me. So I get up and this is my quiet time in the morning, might do a little bit of yoga, a little bit of stretching, and I focus on the day ahead. So I will look at my diary and I will see what work I have to do. I will then also think about other things, because we have a life. Well, yeah, I think when you do this kind of work, it is part of becoming your life, but there are other things which you have to do outside of that as well. So I will plan my day and normally plan it quite well. And so I think for me, it's about the reflection, the planning. I go for a walk every day, either in the morning or depending on what time I'm starting work. It might be when I have a lunch break, I can go for a walk around the town, or if I want to be quiet, go for somewhere a little bit further away. But over time, I create an awareness as to when I need to have that break. So that would be if I was becoming a little bit more irritable, or just finding I was a bit short-tempered, or just something which was different, which was not quite like me, which would show me that I need to just focus on me for a little while, do some more self-care. And to keep my own. I was just thinking.
Set your intentions at the start of the day, and then you wind down at the end of the day, then basically.
Yeah. And I guess to kind of keep my own ego in check, it's lifelong learning. So, obviously I teach Reiki, I see clients for therapy, and people come to me for to work through issues or for advice or something. And so there are times where potentially that could cause someone's ego to grow, as someone says, well, you've really helped me, thank you for what you've done, I've really enjoyed this. And that could, for some people, be a big ego problem. And so for me, I always remind myself that actually, whilst I have helped this person, they have done the work themselves. If I've taught somebody, they have learnt from me, but they have the skills. In therapy, they go away and practice or just think about what we've done. So part of it is it's the person rather than me. I've helped them, but they have done the work. And so ongoing learning is also important, because as well as being this practitioner, this kind of like teacher, I also have to do something to learn, where I become the student, and that becomes humbling.
And on that point, Marianne, is it also important to have that wind down so that you don't absorb everybody else's energy, that you can have a place to release it after dealing with all different sorts of emotions and feelings through the day?
Yes, absolutely. So I always schedule my calendar so I don't see clients one after the other, which is unhealthy for anybody. So I will have a break. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes I will see one or two clients and then have a break. It's not always possible because of the way the day is structured to have a break after every single client. But I kind of make sure that I do some meditation. And that lovely meditation, which I teach on the first degree course, the Hatsure Home meditation, is a lovely meditation to ground you, to keep you focused. So, yeah.
So if somebody was listening to the podcast today and either wanted to give holistic therapy a try, or might even want to do some training in holistic therapy, where would you recommend they begin?
Okay, I would suggest that they start off with an internet search. Do some reading first of all and see what they are drawn to, and then find a local practitioner and go and have a treatment or two and see what they like, see what they feel drawn to. Imagine themselves doing the treatment, because sometimes people like to receive a treatment, but actually they don't necessarily want to do it. And they also have to think about what kind of person they are. So some people don't like to touch others, therefore doing massage or reflexology might not be right for them. And so it's about, I would say, understanding. The person needs to understand themselves, understand what they would like to do, try it out, do some research, try out the treatments, and then think about how they would like to get this to work for them. Using the imagination is a great tool, because if you can imagine something, most of the time you can make it happen. And imagination is always stronger than someone's will. So willpower fades very quickly. But when you rehearse things in your imagination, you make it real.
Yeah, it's like manifesting, isn't it? What you want for your future.
Kind of, yeah.
Wow. See it and believe it, or become it. So you've created a lovely center of wellness. Where do you go from here?
I'm not sure yet. I'm still in that stage where I am contemplating. I'm contemplating, what do I want to do from here? What can I do? What works best for me? And I think it's almost like there are times where you step into your observing self and you watch yourself and you see yourself going through certain daily routines and rituals and things. And I'm actually sometimes watching how I behave, what I think. It sounds very odd, but it's almost like one of those Russian dolls where you've got lots of layers of them. And when you step outside one of the layers, then you can see what suits you, almost like you're, I don't know, do a little bit of astral projection, maybe, who knows.
So it's fair to say then that you're not content with just being you. There are layers that you accept, that there are layers to yourself, and you're willing to peel, remove, and observe, watch. And so I think it takes me to the question of will you be creating new courses, and or new opportunities, anything like that?
Possibly, yes. I think that it's really important for people to move on, not necessarily move on in focusing the same direction. But as human beings, we are meant to be motivated to strive for something else. And again, it's not in an egotistical way that I want to have bigger and better and more. It's not necessarily that, but almost like branching out and maybe doing something different, because you know we are all beings which vibrate, which have a frequency, which move. And when people stop moving or stop moving in a direction, any direction, then that is when things start to die. And so I think it's part of human nature to want to do something more or different, but it doesn't have to be in a consumer type way.
Well, we'll keep our eyes peeled for how you continue to move forward. Marion, do you think there are any downsides to being a healer? And if so, what do you think they are?
I think if there are downsides, it's more to do with the amount of work that someone does, and also perhaps the misunderstanding of, or maybe perhaps somebody doesn't understand themselves very well. So there are people that will keep on working even though they are tired. They will keep on answering emails, keep doing more and more, when actually they are depleted of energy themselves. So the downside would be not doing the self-care, not recognizing that when enough is enough, and not having the confidence to actually, or the ability to say no. So it's not the healing itself which is a problem. It's the individual's perception of what they can do and what their expectations are.
And those sorts of issues, are those things that have affected you in the past and that you're now a bit more conscious of, or have you always been quite measured in your approach to healing?
I think perhaps in the early days when I was working a full-time job in Birmingham, and I was doing, occasional treatments or evenings and weekends, and I would feel kind of flat, depleted, tired. And so there was a recognition relatively early that actually this is too much. So I don't want to give up this work, the energy work, because I love it. So something else has to change. Yeah.
Do you have any big success stories in terms of people you've healed? And obviously, keep them anonymous, but we'd be interested to know, for example, how holistic therapy can help people. So, yeah.
It's a really interesting question. I looked at that question when I saw my list, and I thought, well, because sometimes people ask me that question as well, people that come for treatments, and I'm really cautious with the answer. And I'm cautious with the answer because when someone comes for a single treatment, then they could get to where they need to be, or perhaps some people will come back and have several treatments. But healing is what the person needs and has at that time. And so therefore, as I've just kind of like mentioned about life being vibration and energy, things change over time. So I don't think anybody can ever say that they have been healed from something. Then they might say at that time or for a certain time afterwards, I felt better. But something might happen in life which might bring back the issue, and therefore they would need to come back or have some other healing in a different way. So that kind of the question is quite challenging in that way for me.
Yeah, because it's not really, when you think about this kind of healing, in particular Reiki and stuff like that, it's not you start and you end there. It's not really that, to be honest.
It's not like a medicinal treatment, is it? Where you give you the medicine and all of a sudden you're better. It's
no.
Totally
And to be honest as well, I've never been to a doctor's and a doctor would say, take this medicine and you will be healed. Because if the doctor said that, I'd think, no. Quite often, actually, even if you listen to doctors, they will say, try this. Or try this. If it doesn't work, come back. I can give you something else.
Exactly. Because otherwise, the pharmaceutical companies will be out of business if they give you something and you're better. You're better, and it's no different, really, in terms of healing. as you said, you'll try, and then something might happen, trigger something, unearth something, brought some things rooted up again, and they have to go back into getting treatment, and I'm sure you see that in your psychotherapy practice as well, because as you say, life, we're always
Life
vibrating.
happens.
Yeah, we're always moving and changing.
Yeah.
Like water, there's always movement, so things can always reoccur that causes us to need to go back to that place to go and sit still for a while and have some more help. So I can understand that point. Anyway, sorry, I just wandered off there on that.
No,
as
that's
I
fine.
frequently do.
This is good because we're not scripted. We have questions, so actually it's quite nice to just sometimes just talk and allow that train of thoughts to just go in different directions, to branch out too as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that what happens is that, see, our brain pattern matches. So if we've experienced something and we have found it to be upsetting or traumatic, then our brain
yeah,
will code it in such a way, almost like the old-fashioned days of having paper files. And if you have a file that says danger or trauma or something, and that is stamped red, and that file goes right to the depth, right at the back of a storage cupboard, then there are times where you could have dealt with that particular issue, but something might happen, fast forward 2 years, 5 years, and something else could happen which might be similar. So you can
yeah.
feel the emotions in the same way, and your brain, the little mini you in your head, can go to that filing cabinet and pull out that old file, and you start to connect the two. And
Yes.
so that is why some people re-experience things, and it's not the event they're re-experiencing, it can be the trauma, it's the emotion.
Yes.
And so Reiki and any form of healing or therapy or certain types of therapy can help.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, Marion, you have such a soothing and calming presence. It's been so
Yeah.
lovely to speak to you. I feel healed just from this conversation.
Oh,
So,
It's like the tone in her voice. It's like,
yeah,
I just want to sit, and I can just imagine myself being, treated, by,
absolutely.
whether it's as a therapist or a healer, I could just see myself sitting there, and you're really
Yeah.
helping me to
Well,
navigate my thoughts.
I can definitely recommend Marianne in terms of training for Reiki. But we want to thank you so much for talking to us about ego and about your experiences with with healing, and obviously sharing your success story as a healer.
wow.
And
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's
you're
been an
very
absolute pleasure to speak with both of you today. And I will have to make sure I keep my ego in check because you've said some very kind words to me. Thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
We want to hear from you with your stories and your reflections on any of the topics that we've covered so far, or maybe even your suggestions for topics that you would like us to cover in the future. So please drop us an email at theegodrop@gmail.com, or you can message us on any of our social media accounts.
Our podcast can be found on Apple, Spotify, and any other platform where you consume your content. You can also find us on all socials as The Ego Drop. That is on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, and Facebook. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to our channel, and we'll be most grateful. See you soon. Bye.